She stood in the lawyer's office, her hands trembling so violently that the pen slipped twice before she finally pressed it to paper. Through the blur of tears that wouldn't stop falling, Elena watched her signature appear on the divorce papers, shaky, broken, barely recognizable as her own handwriting. In her coat pocket, the positive pregnancy test felt like it was burning through the fabric, searing into her skin. But Marcus didn't know. He would never know. Because sometimes loving someone means letting them go, even when it destroys you. Especially when it destroys you. 6 years have a way of changing everything. They reshape landscapes, rebuild cities, and transform people into versions of themselves they never imagined becoming. For Elena Martinez, those 6 years had been both an eternity and a heartbeat, a contradiction she'd learned to live with, just like all the other contradictions that had become her life. The divorce had been Marcus's idea, though he'd dressed it up in words that were supposed to soften the blow. "We want different things," he'd said, standing in their kitchen on a Tuesday evening, unable to meet her eyes. "You want children, a family, all of that domestic life. I want to focus on my career. It's not fair to either of us to keep pretending we can compromise on something this fundamental." What he didn't say, but what Elena heard in every pause, in every careful word choice, was that he didn't love her enough. Not enough to envision a future that included her dreams alongside his own. Not enough to try. She'd discovered she was pregnant 3 days later, standing alone in their bathroom at 6 in the morning, watching 2 pink lines appear like a cruel cosmic joke. She could have told him. Should have told him, by every conventional moral standard. But Elena had seen something in his eyes during that kitchen conversation, a kind of trapped desperation, a man already halfway out the door. And she'd realized, with a clarity that felt like ice water in her veins, that telling him would trap him forever. He would stay out of obligation, grow to resent her and their child, and eventually they would all be miserable. So she'd torn the test into pieces, wrapped it in tissue paper, and buried it at the bottom of the bathroom trash. Some acts of love require silence. The day she signed the papers, she'd moved back to her small hometown in upstate New York, to the house her grandmother had left her. She'd raised Maya alone, beautiful, brilliant Maya with Marcus's green eyes and Elena's stubborn chin. She'd built a life from the rubble of her broken dreams, opening a small bookstore that somehow managed to stay afloat even in the age of e-readers and online shopping. She'd learned that you could be both heartbroken and happy, that joy didn't require the absence of grief. Maya knew she had a father somewhere, but Elena had kept the details vague. Sometimes people can't be together, even when they care about each other, she'd explained when Maya was 4 and started asking questions. But that doesn't change how much I wanted you, or how perfect you are. The morning Marcus walked into her bookstore, Elena was reorganizing the children's section while Maya did homework at the small table by the window. It was a Thursday in October, the kind of day when autumn announces itself with aggressive enthusiasm, leaves blazing orange and red, air sharp enough to sting your lungs. She heard the bell above the door and called out automatically, "Welcome to Turnbull Books, let me know if you need help finding anything." When she stood up and turned around, the book in her hands, Something About Dinosaurs, hit the floor with a thud that seemed impossibly loud. Marcus had aged in the way successful people do, with better clothes and expensive haircuts that somehow made him look both older and more refined. But his eyes were the same, and they widened with the same shock Elena felt coursing through her own body. "Elena," his voice cracked on her name. Before she could respond, Maya appeared at her elbow. "Mom, I can't figure out this math problem. Can you?" She stopped, looking between Elena and the stranger with a child's uncanny ability to sense when adults are experiencing something seismic. Elena watched Marcus's face as he looked at Maya. She saw the exact moment recognition hit him, the way his expression moved through confusion to understanding to something that looked like a punch to the gut. Because Maya had his eyes, yes, but she also had his nose, the shape of his face, the way his mouth curved. There was no mistaking it. "How old is she?" Marcus whispered, and Elena heard decades of pain compressed into 4 words. "This is Maya," Elena said, putting her hand on her daughter's shoulder. Her voice was steady, even though inside she was collapsing. "Maya, honey, why don't you go get a snack from the back room? I need to talk to this gentleman for a moment." Maya left with the instinctive obedience of a child who knows something important is happening, even if she doesn't understand what. The moment she disappeared through the back door, Marcus turned to Elena with devastation written across his face. She's mine. It wasn't a question. Yes, you knew. When we signed the papers, you knew. Yes. He sank into one of the reading chairs, his head in his hands. When he looked up, his eyes were red. Why? Why didn't you tell me? I had a right to know, Elena. She had a right to know me. This was the moment Elena had rehearsed 1,000 times in her head, usually at 3 in the morning when sleep wouldn't come. You told me you didn't want children, she said quietly. You were so sure, Marcus. You looked at me like I was asking you to jump off a bridge when I brought up starting a family. What was I supposed to do? Tell you I was pregnant and watch you stay out of obligation? Watch you resent us both? I couldn't do that to Maya. I couldn't do that to you. That wasn't your choice to make. His voice rose, then fell again as he remembered they weren't alone. You took 6 years away from me, Elena. 6 years of her life. I gave you the freedom you wanted. Elena's voice was steady, but tears were sliding down her face. You wanted your career, your life unencumbered by responsibilities you didn't choose. I'm not going to apologize for protecting our daughter from growing up with a father who didn't want her. You don't know that I wouldn't have wanted her. You don't know what I would have chosen if you'd given me the chance. Elena shook her head. I saw your face, Marcus. I saw how you looked when I talked about having children. Like I was proposing a prison sentence. Was I supposed to bet my daughter's emotional well-being on the hope that you'd change your mind? They sat in silence for a long moment, the bookstore suddenly feeling too small to contain the weight of 6 years of secrets and pain in divergent lives. Outside, leaves skittered across the sidewalk in a gust of wind, and somewhere in the distance, someone was playing guitar. I've changed, Marcus finally said. That person you divorced, I'm not him anymore. I spent these 6 years building an empire, and you want to know what I discovered? It's empty. All of it. The success, the money, the recognition. It doesn't mean anything when you have no one to share it with. I've thought about you every single day. I've regretted letting you go every single day. Then why didn't you come find me? Because you deserved better than someone who couldn't figure out what mattered until it was too late. Because I was ashamed of how badly I'd failed you. Because I thought, he laughed bitterly, I thought you'd moved on, built a life, maybe found someone who could give you what I couldn't. I did build a life, Elena said. Just not the one you're imagining. The back door opened, and Maya peeked out. Mom, there's a customer asking about first edition Hemingways. Tell them I'll be right there, sweetheart. But Maya was looking at Marcus with open curiosity now. Are you an old friend of my mom's? Marcus looked at Elena, a question in his eyes. She took a deep breath. This wasn't how she'd imagined this conversation, but then again, nothing about her life with Maya had gone according to plan. Actually, Elena said slowly, this is your father. The words hung in the air like smoke. Maya's eyes went huge, darting between Elena and Marcus. My father. My actual father. Marcus stood up, and Elena could see he was shaking. Hi, Maya. I didn't know about you until just now. But I'm very, very glad to meet you. You didn't know about me. Maya looked at Elena, confusion creasing her forehead. Why didn't he know about me? That's complicated, baby. And it's my fault, not his. Over the next hour, while the customer browsed patiently and probably eavesdropped shamelessly, Elena and Marcus sat down with Maya and tried to explain the unexplainable. How two people could love each other and still not be right for each other. How sometimes adults make decisions that seem right at the time but have consequences they couldn't foresee. How family can be complicated and messy and still full of love. Maya listened with the seriousness of an old soul, asking questions that were sometimes simple and sometimes devastatingly profound. Do you want to be my dad now? She asked Marcus at one point. More than anything in the world, he answered, and Elena could hear the truth of it in his voice. Okay, Maya said simply. But I should tell you, I'm pretty good at math and I like dinosaurs and I don't like it when people talk during movies. So if you're going to be my dad, you should probably know that stuff. Marcus laughed, and it was the first genuine sound of joy Elena had heard from him. Those all seem like very reasonable requirements. I'll do my best. The months that followed were not easy. There were legal discussions about custody and parental rights. There were therapy sessions to help Maya process the sudden appearance of a father she'd never known. There were difficult conversations about money and support and all the practical matters that nobody talks about in romantic stories. Marcus had to learn how to be a parent, and Elena had to learn how to share Maya after 6 years of it being just the two of them. They fought sometimes. They cried sometimes. They fumbled through uncertainty and doubt. But there were also soccer games where Marcus stood on the sidelines next to Elena, both of them cheering as Maya scored goals. There were bedtime stories read in different voices, Maya giggling at Marcus's terrible attempt at a dragon impression. There were slow, careful conversations over coffee after Maya was asleep, where Elena and Marcus rebuilt something that wasn't quite what they'd had before, but might be something better. "I'm not asking you to take me back," Marcus said one evening 6 months after his appearance in the bookstore. They were sitting on Elena's porch, watching fireflies blink in the growing dusk. "I know I don't deserve that. But I want you to know that I understand now what I was too blind to see before. You were the bravest person I've ever met. What you did, raising Maya alone, building this life, it's extraordinary. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry you had to be that strong. By yourself." Elena was quiet for a long moment, watching the fireflies dance. "I was angry at you for a long time," she finally said. "And then I was just tired. But watching you with Maya these past months, seeing how hard you're trying, how much you love her, it's helped. It doesn't erase the past, but it makes the future feel less frightening." "What does the future look like to you?" Marcus asked carefully. "I don't know yet. I think we're building it, day by day. Maybe that's the only way it can be built." Marcus nodded, and they sat in companionable silence, two people who had loved and hurt and lost each other, now finding their way back to something new. Not the romance they'd had before, but something more resilient, forged in the fire of hard truths and harder choices. A year after Marcus walked back into their lives, Elena stood in her bookstore and watched Maya show her father her favorite books, explaining with passionate intensity why each one mattered. Marcus listened with complete attention, asking questions, laughing at her jokes, being fully present in a way he never could have been at 28. Elena thought about that moment in the lawyer's office, signing papers through tears, the pregnancy test torn into pieces in her pocket. She'd believed she was giving up everything, her marriage, her dreams, any chance of the family she'd wanted. But she'd been wrong. Sometimes you have to tear everything apart to build something true. Sometimes love means letting go, and sometimes it means holding space for people to become who they need to be before they can be who you need them to be. The bell above the door chimed, and an elderly customer came in looking for mysteries. Elena went to help her, but not before catching Marcus's eye. He smiled at her, and in that smile was gratitude and regret and hope all tangled together. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was something better, a real one, messy and complicated and full of second chances. Outside, autumn was giving way to winter, the leaves falling and making space for new growth to come. Inside, a family was learning to be a family, one day at a time. And Elena, who had once torn up a pregnancy test and signed away her marriage believing it was the end of everything, discovered that sometimes the most beautiful beginnings are born from the most painful endings. She had cried through her divorce, made an impossible choice alone, and carried the weight of that secret for 6 years. But she had also raised an extraordinary daughter, built a life she was proud of, and found the strength to forgive, both Marcus and herself. That was the real story. Not the romance, not the drama, but the quiet courage of ordinary people choosing kindness over bitterness, hope over despair, love over fear. Maya's laughter rang out across the bookstore, and Elena felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time, peace. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of something stronger. The knowledge that they would be okay. All of them, together.